Everybody, we're trying to keep the occupancy to 50% in accordance with the Executive Order 2021-11. Item number 1 on our agenda is a prayer by Chaplain Laura Brown, and then that will be followed by the pledge by the Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Tom O'Rourke. Chaplain?
Are we doing this now or no?
No, that's later. Yep.
Dear Sovereign Lord, we thank you for this day, this beautiful seasonal weather, and we thank you for all the blessings of this earth, especially the ones that we don't even think about. We thank you for this place, for Mount Pleasant, and that we live in a place where we are free to assemble and talk and voice our concerns and be heard. Lord, I lift up the council members here, the residents of the city, and the guests. I pray that you will give them all open hearts, open minds, and wisdom to truly listen to what's being said, to debate in a spiritual manner, and to really hear the other side. And Lord, when this meeting is over, I pray that you will be with these people as they continue and meet afterward and head back to their lives. Thank you for this opportunity. We ask this in your precious name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. The agenda is approved. Item number 4 is public hearings, awards, and presentations, and we have a few of these tonight. First is a public hearing, which there is comment, if there is any, and when that is over, I do have to gavel it closed, so please excuse that, but it is required. Ms. Kotal.
Yes, sir. Pursuant to Section 6-180 of the South Carolina Code of Laws, this is a public hearing on the proposed amended fiscal year 2021 adopted budget in the amount of $5,723,837.
All right. Is there anyone to comment on this portion of the public hearing?
No one has signed up, sir.
No one signed up. Are you coming to speak on the public hearing?
Yes, sir.
All right. Please state your name and address.
Kevin Cunane, 3032 River Vista Way. I just don't want to pass up the chance on a budget item to speak about the fire department. We opened up a new station this month, still not staffed properly. It's not meeting national standards, period. Fire department, the town is putting the fire department, firefighters, and the public in heavy risk by choice, because every year at the budget time, it's not made a priority. So you have a rescue truck over there at a nice brand new shiny station, and 2 times in the last 2 years or so, 4,000 square foot homes burned to the ground in Hamlin. Why? Because there's not enough firefighters. It's not anything knock on the firefighters. They do a damn good job. But they're in a bad spot, and that's because of this. It's never made a priority. It's expensive to have a proper fire department. Town does a lot of things very well. Fire department's been ignored. It puts the firefighters in a position of having to work much harder and much more deadly situations. And just taking the chance on the public hearing to say, once again, I'm putting it on the record, on public notice. I have a master's degree in the topic. As an attorney, I've litigated fire cases. I was a lieutenant in the New York City Fire Department. I know about staffing, and I've placed it on the record before. And here we are, another year, very minimal progress. There's a national standard. The town needs to start meeting it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Going once? Going twice? All right, this public hearing, which is item number 4A on our agenda, is closed. Item B is a Red Cross Proclamation. Mr. Demura will do the reading for us.
Thank you very much. Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of Town Council. There are two proclamations coming from your office, sir. On your behalf, if it's okay, I'll go ahead and read them. Whereas, March is American Red Cross Month, a special time to honor the kindness of our neighbors who aid families in need every day in the Low Country. Across the United States and around the world, their dedication touches millions of lives each year as they carry out the organization's 140-year mission of preventing and alleviating suffering. And whereas, during the trying times of the coronavirus pandemic, people have stepped up to help others in need, whether it was responding to this year's record-breaking disasters across the country or rolling up their sleeves to give blood when our country faced a severe blood shortage. And whereas, here in the Low Country, local families have relied on Red Cross of South Carolina volunteers for comfort and hope while coping with the pandemic, home fires, tornadoes, floods, and storms. Last year, over 220 volunteers deployed to local disasters and also responded in person and virtually to natural disasters like hurricanes and wildfires. Volunteers also helped more than 1,200 people affected by over 300 home fires in the Low Country by addressing their urgent needs like food, lodging, and recovery support. And whereas, Red Cross of South Carolina volunteers have supported local families in other ways too. Last year in the Low Country, the Red Cross provided nearly 1,500 case services to U.S. service members, veterans, and their families, collected more than 29,000 units of life-saving blood, and trained more than 7,000 people in life-saving skills like first aid and CPR. And whereas, the life-saving work is vital to strengthening our community's resilience. Nearly 200 years since the birth of American Red Cross founder Clara Barton, we dedicate this month of March to all those who continue to advance her noble legacy. And we ask others to join in their commitment to care for people in need. Now, therefore, will Haney, Mayor of the Town of Mount Pleasant, do hereby proclaim March 2021 as Red Cross Month and encourage all Americans to reach out and support this organization and its humanitarian mission. I don't believe anyone was able to join us this evening from the Red Cross, just double checking. And it seems like that's the case, so we'll go ahead and make sure this proclamation is received by them.
Great. All right.
And
Is
on
this
to
the
next one,
remembrance?
sir.
Huh?
Yes, Days of Remembrance.
Yes. Item C is Days of Remembrance. We have a proclamation
Yes.
and then a short remembrance ceremony that will be led by Dr. Murray Treiser.
Okay.
Here.
And Dr. Treiser, are you present, sir? Would you mind standing up here with me? I'll go ahead and read the, welcome. I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, and if you'd like to say a few words or lead us in the presentation.
I would like to say a few words, if that's all right.
Okay, sir. I'll go ahead and read the proclamation first on your behalf, Mayor. Whereas the Holocaust was the state-sponsored systematic persecution and annihilation of European Jewry by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945. And whereas we remember with sadness the 11 million people, including 6 million Jews, who were victims of Hitler's final solution, along with those who were persecuted for their religious and political beliefs, sexual orientation, and physical disabilities. And whereas we remember with admiration the resistors and rescuers, known and unknown, who risked and lost their lives to save others. And whereas we remember with respect the survivors who escaped, were sheltered, or who were freed and who lived to contribute so much to our community and to our world. Whereas the history of the Holocaust offers an opportunity to reflect on the moral responsibilities of individuals, societies, and governments. And whereas we have an obligation to ensure that the memory and legacy of lives lost or forever changed in this horrific event are never forgotten. And whereas we remember and honor the liberators, which liberated the World War II concentration camp 76 years ago. Therefore, be it resolved that we pledge today to firmly commit ourselves to never forget and to work to promote human dignity by confronting intolerance and hate whenever and wherever it occurs. Now, therefore, will Haney, Mayor of the Town of Mount Pleasant, pursuant to an act of Congress and United States Holocaust Memorial Council, do hereby proclaim the week of Sunday, April 4th, until Sunday, April 11th, as the week of remembrance in memory of the victims, survivors, rescuers, and liberators of the Holocaust. and further proclaim that we as citizens of Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, should promote human dignity and confront hate whenever and wherever it occurs. Oops. Thanks, sir. Can I present this to you?
Well, I'd like to first of all thank the mayor and the town council for taking the time and effort to recognize the subject of the Holocaust. My name is Murray Treiser. I live here on Pignatelli Crescent in Mount Pleasant, and I am the child of Holocaust survivors. My whole family, just about, perished in the Holocaust. In fact, I had an older sister who died in the Holocaust. So I'm aware of the damage that the Holocaust can do to families. So the question comes up, why is it important for us here today to remember the Holocaust? So I believe that the story of the Holocaust is a story of courage, perseverance, ingenuity, and most of all, it's a story that depicts innocent people, people just like the residents of Mount Pleasant, who had a determination to survive against the longest odds. I believe we owe it to those people to tell their story, to sustain the memory of those who perished at the hands of hatred. By remembering the Holocaust, we learn the lessons of what happens when hatred, indifference, and apathy rule. By remembering the Holocaust, we give tribute to those people, in many cases strangers, who through acts of decency and kindness in the darkest moments of history and at great risk to themselves, helped save the lives of many innocent people. Therefore, we remember the Holocaust because it represents how evil can exist anywhere, anytime. History shows there's no place on the planet where evil has not been historically and can not be in the future. It's important to remember the Holocaust because it shows that courage, strength, and a desire to survive can never, ever be extinguished in humanity. Most importantly, I believe that it's important to remember the Holocaust to teach that goodness will always prevail over evil. I thank the mayor and the council for allowing me to speak. Good evening.
Thank you.
Is Dr. Treiser going to lead us in the lighting of the candles?
Okay, we'll do that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
We'll leave them on throughout tonight's
These are
meeting.
pretty bad matches.
You have guys?
Try it again.
Thank you.
Are y'all lit?
Are we all doing it at the same time? I mean, you may have to use mine. Yes. Nope.
Got it.
Oh, there you go. Do you need directions? I can't blow with my mask on, sorry.
It's over. Everybody's lit. Dr. Treiser, thank you very much.
Thank you so much again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Item D is longevity awards from the police department and the recreation department. Chief?
Lieutenant Harris, will you come up for me? Well, Lieutenant Harris, before I recognize you, you said your wife is here. Might I ask her to stand for me? I want to thank you for 25 years of service as well. Without your support to Lieutenant Harris, he would not be standing where he is today. I know that for a fact, how important our spouses are and our family support, so thank you. Give her a round of applause. I have the privilege and honor of recognizing Lieutenant Craig Harris for 25 years of service with the town of Mount Pleasant. Lieutenant Harris began his career with the Mount Pleasant Police Department March of 1996 as a patrol officer, as we all do, and he worked his way up through the ranks to his current grade of lieutenant. Lieutenant Harris has worked in numerous bureaus, but two most notable assignments have been his time as an investigator and the Office of Professional Standards Lieutenant, which he currently holds. As an investigator, Lieutenant Harris was known and trusted by members of our community. That trust attributed to his success as an investigator, having victim, witnesses, and even suspects willing to talk with him and provide critical information needed to solve crimes. And that wasn't only here in Mount Pleasant. Other agencies would reach out to Lieutenant Harris because he was so well respected in other communities that he could assist with solving their crime and making their families whole. Lieutenant Harris's current assignment in the Office of Professional Standards carries many responsibilities that include recruitment, which is so important in this day and age, background investigations to ensure we're getting only the best officers to come work for us, inspectional services. He's responsible for looking into all of our different bureaus to make sure we're operating by policy and by national guidelines and standards. And he's the investigator of complaints or allegations of misconduct to ensure the highest caliber officers is maintained within the Mount Pleasant Police Department. A lot of times we'll get these complaints from these officers, some are founded, some are not, but Lieutenant Harris has such a way talking with those who have filed these complaints to either helping them understand why we do what we do, or recognizing that there are things we can do better. And then he takes that opportunity to meet with those officers and mentor them and making them better, making our agency better. Couldn't have a better ambassador for his town than Lieutenant Harris. He conducts himself in a highly professional manner that exemplifies what a command level officer should be, and his professional persona can be seen in every aspect of his job performance. During the recent civil unrest, Lieutenant Harris worked side by side with me and was instrumental in calming many potential demonstrators who were unaware of the professional level of service provided by the Mount Pleasant Police Department and the high standards we follow, that they left his office in my conference room praising our agency and our community efforts and actually going out on our behalf, telling other agencies how it should be done. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for standing with me in this town as we got through a difficult time. Lieutenant Harris doesn't stop here. He volunteers his time with the youth and the community he grew up in and has dedicated his life to educating himself and others to ensure all opportunities are available to all who want to pursue them. During his 25 years, Lieutenant Harris has received countless number of thank you letters and commendations from the public and other police agencies. Lieutenant, thank you for 25 years of service, 25 years of working with me, 25 years of protecting this community. I salute you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council.
Good evening.
It is my pleasure tonight to recognize Terry Steed. Can you come up here with us, Terry? You know, I have several remarks to make here tonight that I wanted to talk about all you've done over your career, but I also want to let you know you've got a lot of people here that are supporting you and recognizing, including, I'm one of 4 recreation directors that are here tonight. We have Ken Ayub, Ted Summerford's over here, and Councilman O'Rourke as well, that have been here during your career. Terry is the department's longest-serving employee. Even before she became a town employee, she worked with our athletic program, officiating basketball games. She was initially hired by the town as a temporary summer hire in 1991. Later that year, she became the department's first part-time receptionist at the Jones Center. A year later, in 1992, Terry was hired full-time as an athletic coordinator, where she assisted the athletic director in the running of youth and adult sports. As the town and the department grew, she was assigned to run the basketball and volleyball programs, where she was able to fully utilize her extensive knowledge and experience of basketball as a player, as a coach, as an official, and as a manager. And I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail about some of her basketball experience because it's really impressive. I learned some of this as we were preparing for this tonight, all the stuff that you've done. She officiated high school and college level basketball for over 21 years. As a matter of fact, she was the first female to officiate a major boys high school tournament here in the Lowcountry. She was an international basketball player in Amsterdam. She was the coach of Team USA girls 15 to 20-year-old basketball team. She was athletic director for the girls Team USA People to People basketball program. And she was also instrumental in the operation and management of the Charleston Splash and Lowcountry Fire women's semi-pro teams. So she knows what she's doing in the field, and we're lucky to have her as part of our program, leading our basketball program. But beyond basketball, Terry also completed her MBA from the University of Phoenix in 2003. She started a very successful the Recreation's Volleyball Academy instructional program with Laura Tagami. She also started the Lowcountry Middle School volleyball program, coordinating with Charleston, North Charleston, Hanahan, and Goose Creek, which started with 7 teams the first year and now has over 100 teams competing in the volleyball program. She's been a member of the department's Volunteer Appreciation Committee, and she's also been an active member of SCAP, which is our state agency for the South Carolina athletics programs. She has served this community and tens of thousands of participants in her programs over the last 30 years. She is an expert in her field. Her knowledge, experience, and skills have had a tremendous impact on the department's ability to provide quality programs for our residents. Congratulations, Terry. 30 years of service to this town. All right.
All right, that's it for longevity awards, item D. Item 5 is approval of the minutes from the January 26th Town Council retreat, the February 9th Town Council meeting, and the January 2021 financial statement. Do we have a motion?
Look for approval of all 3.
Have a motion to approve all 3. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 6 is public comment. If you're here for public comment, please come when your name is called. Come to the podium. You'll have 2 minutes. You'll hear the clock, and we ask everyone to respect that so that everyone has a chance to speak. Mr. DeMore?
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a significant number of speakers, so we'll go 2 at a time. I'll call one individual, please step forward. I'll call a second name, please stand a few feet behind. And we'll start this evening with Reese Messina, and then Donald Bailey on deck.
Hello.
Say hello to the mayor.
Hi.
Okay, Reese just wants to make a comment,
Sure.
because Reese,
I
I'm her mom.
I would like the freedom to choose to wear a mask or not.
Go ahead. You wish it was the way it was?
Yeah.
Speak up,
I wish it was the way it was like it used to be.
because you don't get mask breaks. Go ahead, talk to the mayor.
No, I already have.
Say it again. Okay. Speak up. Okay. Did you hear her, Mayor?
I did not.
Okay. Can you speak up?
Sorry.
Wait, if I read it better.
Okay. Speak up.
I would like the freedom to choose to wear a mask or not, and
Did you hear that?
Something about masks.
Okay.
Oh, mass.
Is it okay I speak up for her?
Be an astronaut.
Yes, you may, you certainly
Okay,
may.
so she just wants to express her concern. She wrote here that her name is Reese, and she would like the freedom to choose to wear a mask or not, especially during school hours, because they don't get mask breaks. Okay, so she's just asking for the choice to wear one or not, if you would consider that.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Okay, what do you say? So great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Turner? Please.
I sure hate to follow that. Mr. Mayor, members of town council, thank you for your service. The issue I'd like to address is pretty complex. It pertains to flooding. Some of which there's little that can be done about, we all know. Unless we follow Charleston's lead and build a wall around the town. Now, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to promote that. What I am here to discuss is the flooding on my neighborhood, William Street Extension, down to the end of Royal Avenue. There are a number of us who've been living in that community for over 35, 40 years now, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. Now, I understand there's not a whole lot we can do about the high tides. However, part of the flooding problem that we're having over on that area of town, I believe, and I'm not an engineer, is caused because of the lack of the maintenance of the ditch on the corner of William Street and Royal Avenue. It's not cleared up, it gets clogged up, and worse, the drainage, I call it the flapper valve, and I don't know if that's the proper name or not, but the flapper valve doesn't work properly. It's open. And the water consequently floods into William Street, and I'm running out of time. I've sent you the council some pictures, and I don't know if you had a chance to look at them, but you can see that was one of the days that we did, in fact, have flooding. Fortunately, I had the opportunity, the day that I sent you the letter to meet with your engineer, and he tells me that there are things to be getting ready to be done, and I'm running out of time. I ask you to please be aware of the health of the young children in our neighborhood, and we need to get that taken care of as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Keith Clark?
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Bill Turner. I work with Dominion Energy South Carolina. I'm General Manager of Electric Operations for our South Carolina territory. Appreciate the opportunity to speak before you this evening. First, just want to say those are some great recognitions and observations that you did earlier. I live at 268 Mount Royal Drive in Mount Pleasant. I wanted to give you some additional information about a rezoning that's before you tonight for final reading on our property at 1277 Chuck Dawley Boulevard. Just a little bit of history that I have found out over time. Some of you may know this is our second location that we've had in Mount Pleasant. We had an office at the corner of Hibben and Wilden Street that we acquired actually in 1928 from the Mount Pleasant Railroad Company. I had not heard of that before, and I'm going to do a little more digging on it, try to figure out what that is. But we were there until approximately 1988, in that time frame when we moved to the new building that we're in today. The property that we did own there at the corner was transferred to the town of Mount Pleasant in 1995, used as a temporary fire station for a period of time, and then the town of Mount Pleasant sold that. It's now an architectural firm currently in use today. Moved into the new building right before Hurricane Hugo, so we weathered the storm at that location. We've got about 30 company personnel that work at that location and about 35 contract personnel that take care of our entire service territory within the East Cooper area. We serve about 62,000 meters out of that location, so if you look at it from a person or a people standpoint, about 180,000 people. It includes the town of Mount Pleasant, town of Sullivan's Island, town of Isle of Palms, city of Isle of Palms, rather, city of Charleston, Daniel Island, Cainhoy Peninsula, Wando, all of that area is included by this office here. We have our personnel available today if you have any questions when that comes up on the agenda. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Lynn Furlow.
Good evening, council. I'm Keith Clark, 28 Agora Place. I'm the architect for Dominion for this potential rezoning here on Chuck Dolly Boulevard. There were a couple of open questions by y'all asked at the first reading that I wanted to address. One was pretty basic about square footage of the building existing versus new. Existing building is 12,500 square feet. The new construction will be 15,000 square feet. There was also a question about will the detention basin along Chuck Dolly interfere with the historic live oaks and other trees along Chuck Dolly? That answer is no. We have done a study, and the new detention basin will not intrude within the drip line of those trees. We had an open local residents meeting introducing the project to them, and there was three main concerns that they had. One was the floodlights and the light pollution that exited our property. This is going to be a lead silver facility. We will be required to do cutoff fixtures. Those cutoff fixtures will greatly minimize the amount of light pollution that exits our property, or Dominion's property. Second one was the early morning truck noise, primarily due to the backup horns. This new layout that we're doing is a much more efficient layout promoting forward truck movement and much less backing, so that noise is going to be greatly minimized by this new layout. Thirdly was a perimeter fence and its condition. We plan to work with DRB to gain a much better understanding of materials and height that we can work with the wood fence that currently separates the Dominion property from the local residents. So we plan to work that through DRB. And again, we're here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Sanford.
Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. My name is Lynn Furlow, 3536 East Higgins, here in Mount Pleasant. Come to you tonight again, just want to make a public statement about the mask mandate. I understand there may be a second reading tonight. Just wanted to share that I've been a geriatric nurse for 35 years. I've been certified in infection control for 20 of those years. I have been an administrator in long-term care facilities for 18 of those years. Now I get to add to that, I ran a nursing home through a global pandemic with minimal loss of life. I did hold a few hands of families and residents who expired due to COVID during the last year, and that's been tough. I am a fully vaccinated person as a result of working in a healthcare facility. I am not, with all of those credentials, smarter than the CDC though. And the CDC came out yesterday and said that I, as a fully vaccinated person sitting in this courtroom, am supposed to wear my mask. And I'm going to respect that they're a lot smarter than I am. And I want this pandemic to end, and so I would appreciate mandating mask use as it becomes apparent that certain people do not follow science, and they do not find the need to follow that direction. So I would appreciate the mask mandate continuing.
Jane Prevost.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, good to see you all again. Thank you for your service. I am here to ask for your help and to speak on short-term rentals, which I think is not just about me, but most significantly about the complexion and feel of Mount Pleasant. I think it's a really important issue, and I'd put it to you this way. I drive a Suburban that has 360,000 miles on it. It's a piece of junk. But it's a car that still works, and you do what you got to do at times. And the same way, I fell into this notion of short-term rentals because it was what I needed to do, and it has worked for me. And so my ask is that you maintain flexibility on that front. And I say that for two important reasons. One is, you know, I live downtown. I've lived over at Sullivan's Island, and those places have become Disneylands. They're not real. You have phenomenally wealthy people coming in and they stay for, 2 weeks out of the year. It does not make a community. Real communities are made up of people who have financial setbacks. They have divorce. They have health care issues. They grow old. They lose earning power. And all of those things make, again, this notion of short-term rental that much more important in allowing people real people, to keep here at Mount Pleasant and call it home. And the other reason I think it's important is there are a lot of us, we've had a number of conversations, a number of us, and we've tried to play by the rules. I mean, I live across from the water treatment plant. There's nobody that lives beside me. I bought the lot behind me. No, there's never been one complaint ever with the short-term rentals in my house. And I bounced from the ADU to the main house. I just ask for you to maintain flexibility. If you say, well, you can't do ADU, then let me rent the lot that I bought back behind my house to protect from there ever being a complaint. I think it's very important that you maintain flexibility here. I see my time is up, but thank you for your consideration on this. Appreciate it.
Sir, could I have your name, please?
It's Mark Sanford, and I live at 509 King Street, Mount Pleasant. I apologize. Yes, ma'am.
Sounds real familiar.
Thank you.
Jeannie Graham?
That was great. We needed some comedic relief. My name is Jane Prevost, and first I want to thank you as a former North Carolina native from Asheville, soon to call Mount Pleasant my permanent home. It's taken us about 10 years to get here, but I want to just tell you how impressed I have been with the council and the Planning Commission over the years, and just this very tight-knit community. We've been very involved at any opportunity that we could, and just been very impressed. My 8th grader will soon attend Lucy Beckham, and that just brings tears to my eyes for 10 years watching that process occur. I did want to speak to short-term rentals. It's the only, our property offering a short-term rental opportunity in a neighborhood that allows that within our HOA, is the only way we were ever able to subsidize a home in this area, because the real estate, I'm a licensed agent back in North Carolina, but the real estate has skyrocketed, and it was the only way possible. Tonight, I would present to you a paradigm that might not have been considered thus far. And when I spoke to someone at the Planning Commission about a year ago, once we went to a finite number, or 1%, a limitation on the complete amounts, she said, you want to manage the devil you know, not the devil you don't. And what I would say to you is if we as a community begin limiting permits to a finite number, not with growth in mind, the 1%, which I thought was conservative and worked, you're gonna allow the wild, wild west to occur, which is what has happened in Asheville. People that need to subsidize by renting are gonna do it. Regardless. And so I would ask that you govern it and have enforcement versus limiting the permits. Thank you.
Keith Blanford?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Graham. Thanks for this opportunity. I, again, would like to speak to the short-term rental issue on limiting them. So I'd like you to consider 2 points on why not to limit them. So one, as you've heard the last 2 speakers, my first point is limiting them will hurt people's income, especially during COVID. This just seems like a double whammy for people. And number 2, you limit them, you're only helping a few. Thank you.
Michael Novielli?
Before I begin, I would like to, this is for you, Chief, or for the attorney. I don't want to give my address. For those of us who have been fighting for freedom, we have been treated so poorly. We have been canceled, we have been doxxed, we have been censored, and I'm concerned for the safety of my family and my children. So when I give my address out, then people know where I live. And even these people in the press have given my address out. So I don't want to do it, and I know if that's something I can skip. But I would rather not start my time because I'm actually not talking to the subject.
Sir, you're speaking.
I am asking whether I can not give my address. I'm not actually addressing what I want to speak about. Is this for real? Can we reset that, please?
Excuse me, you're out of order, and you can be removed.
Remove my wife. Do it.
Sir, let me go ahead and explain something to you right now. I will do that. Do not come in here and be disrespectful. I hear you, you've asked a question, it'll take you 2 minutes.
Thank you. All right. So my name is Keith Blanford. I think some of you know, I work with teams here and around the world, and we have been watching the election process over the last 2 years very closely. What we have found, consistent with DNI Ratcliffe's report to the administration, that it is indeed foreign entities working in conjunction with elected officials on all levels of government to effect a regime change here in the United States. Now, this is a fact, and I don't care what the press is teaching people to believe. This is what happened. And what we have found is their major tool for doing so was the exacerbation of a virus. And when they did that, they were able to change election laws and affect the election outcome. I'm encouraging all local officials to take a really good look at where they're getting their data. Is the person providing you with the data legit? Are they a rabid anti-Trumper? Has the data been manipulated? I'm encouraging you to revisit these unlawful mandates because men like me are watching every aspect of it. We are looking at every conversation. We are looking at every transaction, and there will be consequences to the election. This is not going away. I'm here as a service to help you in these mandates because it's going to be worse. Stop it now.
Angie Pike.
Good evening, Mike Novielli, 221 Bayfront Drive, Mount Pleasant. Regarding Governor McMaster's latest executive order 2021-12, dated March 5th, 2021, while some of the language within the order appears contradictory, the overarching message is quite clear. It's time to open up. According to the order, DHEC and its partners have conducted more than 6 million COVID tests and have documented measured success, progress, and declining trends in COVID cases and new hospitalizations. The order further states that DHEC and its partners have administered over 1 million doses of COVID vaccines. As a result, the governor has determined it is necessary to now modify, amend, or rescind certain COVID emergency measures. Most recently, at a town council meeting, we heard from an MUSC representative who admitted, after some prodding from Ms. Landing, that COVID cases were actually declining in Mount Pleasant. At least a dozen states have now either rescinded or shortly plan to rescind statewide mask mandates. So with cases and hospitalizations declining in Mount Pleasant, statewide, and across the country, my question to this mayor is, has your unilateral proclamation regarding mask mandates been rescinded, and if not, why? I know you might state you sought counsel from local hospitals and medical experts. We all have our medical experts. In fact, the world-class pandemic experts and epidemiologists I've been following from Yale, MIT, Stanford, and the University of Chicago had all predicted reaching herd immunity by the spring of 2021. But irrespective of any expert's opinion, the bottom line is data, and the results are in. The pandemic is over, and it's time to unmask society. Right, Mr. Mayor? Thank you.
Mamie Rand.
Good evening to all of you. My name is Angie Pike. I live at 1227 Farrago Street. Mr. Mayor, Town Council, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. After the election, I was waiting for us to have a town council meeting to talk about the mask mandate. We had a new administration. They were talking about unity and transparency. But I was informed that there wasn't going to be a discussion about the mask mandate. When I called the mayor's office, what I was told is that the mayor had decided to invoke an executive order, and the reason that he decided to invoke the executive order, I think to extend the mask mandate until the end of this month, was that he had, and I quote, called some of you on town council, and that y'all had shared with him that you had no intention of changing your vote, and that the same people are always showing up to speak about masks, and so there wasn't going to be any new information. And so for me, it was a little troublesome because our new president is calling for unity and transparency. I don't know who was called, and I'm a fairly new person, and I had some new information that I wanted to share. I know that you all believe in your heart that you're doing what is right, but at the end of the day, you know, we are all adults. We are your constituents. We are not your children. I'm asking two things of you this evening. Number one, that town council always give the residents and the constituents of this town the opportunity to voice their concerns in front of you, because I have no idea if you've read the emails. You know, thousands of them are sent. We don't know. I don't know who was called. Lastly, I want to ask that you would follow the governor right now and allow us as adults to choose and make our decisions. We already are. We're already going to. Stores are already dictating that. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your help. Please give us back our freedom. Thank you so much.
Brian Mondello.
My name is Mamie Rand, and as we approach the year mark for the 15 days to slow the spread, let me introduce truth. Truth, the Bill of Rights state our freedoms and what the government cannot do. Truth, masks are a freedom issue. Government has been forcing people to wear masks despite the evidence showing little in preventing cases. Evidence has been censored, causing a one-way narrative. Truth, COVID is a 99.9% recoverable disease. Truth, throughout 2020, the World Health Organization stated no direct evidence on masking healthy people to prevent COVID. Truth, University of Oxford Center for Evidence-Based Medicine wrote considerable uncertainty as to the value of masks, only needed for the elderly or high risk. Truth, if we continue without acknowledging failures, that is putting forth dangerous misinformation. And those who insist there's evidence that masks have prevented cases are propagating false information. Truth, if you believe in masks and believe they work, wear them. If you don't believe in masks and don't believe they work, don't wear them. It's quite easy. That is what liberty is. Faith in people is freedom and liberty. Faith in government is tyranny and force. I ask you to listen to the young child who was here at the beginning. Give us our freedom back and remove the mask mandate. Thank you.
Ethel Flood.
Good evening. I'm Brian Mondello, 1200 Gannett Road, Mount Pleasant. Thank you for your service, Mr. Mayor and Town Council members. Appreciate everything that you do. I'm here to follow up on a letter that I sent each of you in opposition to passage of Amendment 21011, changing the zoning of the adjacent property to the neighborhoods on Chuck Dolly Boulevard. I don't believe is the way to move forward and make Mount Pleasant a better area for the residents to live in. I believe that there can be things done in the current zoning, AB, rather than to change to the PI2 zoning that will prove better for the future of the area. And the impact that can happen moving forward with PI2 zoning, such as having fuel storage and dispensing, transportation terminal, public utility substation, pump station, and a wastewater treatment plant. I don't think that that is anything that anybody that's sitting up on this table would like to live next door to. And I think that if you work hard enough, that a solution can be provided and found in the AB zoning. You can do a workaround to provide Dominion what they need to have so that they stay in compliance of the laws, and that life will go on as the people that are living around that property expect it to. So I ask you strongly to reconsider the earlier votes and do not pass the amendment that's on the table tonight. Thank you very much.
Towner, McGill.
I'm Ethel Flood from 440 Morrison Street, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Good evening, everyone. I don't have any particular things to say, but I want you to know I'm still here. And when you get on a certain subject, don't just come with tunnel vision, look at the big picture. Usually when I come, I sign my name whether I want to speak or not, just in case. Thank you.
That was good. That's great. Thank you.
Trey Adams.
Not either. Good evening, Mayor Haney, members of council, Towner McGill, 1347 Outreach Lane. It's hard to argue that the way state Senate districts drawn in Mount Pleasant and East Cooper make much sense. Our issues are not the same as residents of Beaufort, Moncks Corner, and Myrtle Beach. As a result of those district lines, residents of this town and the beach municipalities are the overwhelming minority in each of the three districts, ranging from 39% down to 16% of the total registered voters in each. 2 weeks ago, I started an online petition to the General Assembly for more pragmatic representation for our community. To date, it has nearly 500 signatures, and I've heard from dozens of residents who support the initiative. Comments range from, "This just makes common sense," to, "It's ridiculous for Mount Pleasant to be split up like this." As I mentioned in the PJL committee meeting last week, this is not a partisan issue, and it's not a slight against anyone currently representing our area. We have an opportunity to realign districts once every 10 years, and we live with those consequences for a decade, positive or negative. I hope you'll agree the legislature should do something that makes more sense, now that this is the fourth largest municipality in the state. I appreciate your consideration on this issue and urge you to vote yes on tonight's resolution to ask the General Assembly to allow Mount Pleasant more equitable representation. I believe this will also create more awareness and promote other residents helping us to speak with one voice during the redistricting process. Thank you all for your service to the town.
Bill Macchio.
Hey, Trey Adams. I live at 1336 Parkton Road. I'm here on the short-term rental issue. I'll echo Sanford's comments. Maintain flexibility. I own two properties. I bought them after I paid close attention when y'all were adopting the ordinances about a year ago or 2 years ago, I guess. We capped it at 4% or at 1%. Then it was about 400. You've currently got 390 permits out. Now you're talking about reducing that to 350. From what I understand from a conversation with Ms. Chapman, that I'm grandfathered in, but I failed to find that in the writing. So I understand we're gonna have some conversation about that. It's just the first reading, so I'm gonna just listen. But I'm a responsible owner. I think most of the people running this thing, running the Airbnbs, are responsible. Looks like we've got you've got a demerit system where you can track people who are habitual offenders. I think that's barking on the right path. So I'm gonna listen, but just maintain flexibility, and thanks for what you're doing.
Lori Bixler.
Thanks y'all for what you do, Chief, Town Administrator. Y'all allowed me to publish some awesome positive stories about Mount Pleasant, and I thank you very much for that. I did want to say I'm here about short-term rentals, Bill Mashia at 1319 Lake Mallard Boulevard. But I wanted to say something about Dominion and Bill. They do what they say they're going to do. And I say that because I live in Mallard Lakes. They're my next door neighbor across my fence. They came over and did fix my fence from Anthony, who I'm going to talk about in a second. So please, the second reading, I think they're a good bet. And if they don't get what they want, another housing industry might try to get in there. So anyway, my son wrote this, and it's about our short-term rental. and he wanted me to read it to y'all. Anthony Maschio acquired my traumatic brain injury February 1st, 2013. But I am sending this to you to explain why dwelling the short-term rental to less than 1% puts at risk my father's pre-planned financial safety net to allow me being permanent. It kind of fits in with Mark Sanford's talking about community. A safety net designed to allow me, being permanently disabled, to be able to bring a reasonable income for myself. My dad leaves this party, as he likes to say. He hadn't shared his plan with me until he had all it laid out and in perfect order, and his presentation deserved nothing but a round of applause. This is the first time my son's ever told me he appreciates what I've done for him. So here's to hope that I can sum it up in a same light. We determined, my medical team, that it was best to become independent and myself sufficient to prove to my parents that I would be okay after they passed. So he has this rental that he does himself, y'all. And if it goes below 1%, we're in jeopardy of my son's security for the rest of his life. Thank you guys very much. And again, thanks for what y'all do.
Barry Wolf.
Hi, I'm Laurie Bixler, 144 3rd Avenue, and I'm here to talk about short-term rentals, although the mask conversation is getting very interesting. And if I run out of things to say about short-term rentals, maybe I can deviate there. Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for your hard work. Some of you don't know me, so you are not aware that this conversation started back between myself and Billy Swales. I'm not sure how many years that is. It might be 12 years now. 3 mayors and more council members than I can count. Although I think, Ari, I think you've been here through the whole thing.
Yes.
Right? Anybody else been here through the whole thing? No. Okay. So I get worried every time new council members start back at scratch. I would like to echo what Mark Sanford said. By the way, I'd like to tell Mrs. Flood that I'd like to just stand up here too, because I think you've all heard everything that I've had to say for 11 years. I worry about being grandfathered in, okay? I'd love to see you all just, please, give me some security. There have been very few complaints. I think all the complaints were geared at one particular person, which got resolved, and the rest were permit issues. Jane and Michelle do a bang-up fantastic job. Jane has a strong lack of resources and teeth in order to make the ordinance work. So instead of trying to have unintended consequences, what I'm asking you to do is what you started to do, I thought, by reopening the ordinance, which was to give some teeth to the penalties and some method for Jane to actually track down people who are not permitted and bring the money into Mount Pleasant for the taxes for those of us who are responsible great owners. And thank you so much for 11 years of conversation.
Thank you.
Eddie Phipps.
Barry Wolf, 1468 Pocahontas. Thank you all for your service. I do appreciate it. Also, thank you for every year, the Days of Remembrance. My middle name is Paul, for my uncle Jean Paul, who died in Auschwitz. So it's important to me. In regard to the Phillips community and 41, I think that in my opinion, is the Phillips community has paid a very dear price over the years, and if we can find a workaround, I think we need to. As far as short-term rentals, I believe flexibility is the key, but I want to make sure everybody understands that if you cluster short-term rentals in old Mount Pleasant, where I happen to reside in the Indian Village, that's a problem for me. Lastly, the mask ordinance. I've heard a lot about personal freedom. I've heard a lot about everything. I want to remind every one of you on the dais that you are in a nonpartisan office. Politics is out of this thing, okay? My freedom to wear a mask or not wear a mask is my freedom. However, if I'm going into a grocery store, if I'm going into a drugstore, if I'm going into a small area, I want to make sure that I'm not infecting anybody. I'm not sure, I want to make sure that people aren't affecting me. I want to make sure, and the reason we're having this debate is the people who don't want to wear masks on the guise of freedom. That's the, you know, they don't care about us. They don't care about me, it seems. So please, go forward. Thank you all.
Good evening, Mayor, Town Council. Am I the last one, Eric?
Yes, sir, we may have speakers on 41.
So I get 4 minutes? I doubled my time. Good evening. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for your service. We appreciate it. We appreciate the partnership that we have. Mayor, thank you for coming and speaking on January. We always appreciate you coming. I don't think I've thanked you enough yet. But I will. And we always appreciate the chief coming, both chiefs, Chief Mixon and Chief Ritchie. We'd like to extend them the First Responders Award that we like to give out monthly. We're a non-political organization, so as a lawyer, I'd like to opine on some of these issues, but I'm not going to. And so I'm just here because many of you come and honor us with your presence on our monthly meetings, and so I figured that I would come over here and say thank you. We appreciate it. Again, you know, we're trying to build a great organization. We appreciate the partnership with the town. We're trying to build an organization of community leaders, business leaders, and influencers, and we truly, truly appreciate everything that y'all do to help us. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, if we have speakers remaining from Highway 41.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to speak on the Highway 41 issue, please come forward.
I'd like to speak on another issue.
No? Typically, sir, yes. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Denise Terry. I'm at 1324 Bluebird Drive in Mount Pleasant. And I'm here today to speak about the opposition for the upzoning of 1277 Chuck Dolly Boulevard from AB to PI2. I hope you've all had a chance to read the letters from the neighbors surrounding Dominion, as well as my emails, explaining the reasons for our opposition, and asking you to find another way to get this pushed through so that they can continue to use the laydown yard without increasing the uses to potentially hazardous uses such as fuel storage dispensing. We've heard this before. Transportation terminal, recycling and waste-related facility, and a couple of more. So I believe when I went door to door and spoke to the neighbors regarding the Dominion meeting that they had where they were shown a conceptual plan of what they were planning on doing, I don't believe that the neighbors were actually told about the upzoning. Don't know whether that was an oversight on Dominion's part, but the 3 truck noise, the fence, and the light pollution were the least of their worries when they realized what PI2 could entail for this land in the future if it had been sold to a private party. Down the road, 10 years down the road. Dominion did say that they had no plans to do any of these hazardous uses, but we all don't have a crystal ball. And once you zone this PI2, it's PI2. It's private land. They could sell it tomorrow. I reached out to Dominion, had a couple of nice conversations with them, and kindly asked them if they could do deed restrictions. If they're just going to use the laydown yard, could they do deed restrictions for these alarming other uses that they say they're never going to need? I did not get a definitive answer on that. So we don't have a crystal ball. We can't have a guarantee. No one can say 100% that these uses will never happen.
Ma'am.
So I encourage you to vote this down, try to find another way to let them have their laydown yard. Thank you.
Sir. Yes, ma'am. Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Olga Blandford. I want, first of all, apologize for screaming out there, but I just didn't mean to disrespect anybody here. But I just can't sit here and watch this unlawfulness going on. For everybody's knowledge, it's not the rule here to even say your name, especially address, okay? And I don't know why Mr. Mayor decided that's the rule from now on, and everybody sitting here doesn't stand up for your citizens and say that's not actually the law. I'm personally, and a group of my friends, after speaking here and presenting addresses, we not only received horrible messages via social media, but also on our personal homes, okay? So I'm concerned about my safety, and this is not a rule to present address here. So why are we sitting here all not saying anything about it? It's a good thing that we talk about Holocaust this evening. I'm from Soviet Union. My family was affected by World War II, Bolsheviks, Stalin regimes, all of it. I know how hard, and I know I lost a lot of family members through this, but I'm telling you, we're repeating the history here. The Nazi regime's already here, so let's stop it now. Did you see that little kid who doesn't want to wear a mask? We're abusing our kids here. Let's stop this madness now. Thank you.
Hello, Mamie Rudy, 1232 Melvin Bennett. I think you guys probably got my few emails from the last reading, and now this is the final reading. I'm here to speak on 1277 Chuck Dolly in opposition of rezoning. As you know, I live at 1232 Melvin Bennett, right next to 1236 Melvin Bennett, and of course that was rezoned from R1 to AB, and zoning is zoning is zoning. I feel like I've said that probably 150 times in the past 4 years. As you know, they can do whatever they want to once they rezone. I'm not at all saying that SCNG and Dominion hasn't been, at least a decent neighbor, but they are directly adjacent to our neighbors. And we are in a residential community. And to have a PI2 zone right next door to our neighborhood could mean anything from utility to wastewater, which I know, Mr. Mayor, you said that wasn't something they were going to do with that property. I understand that. But there are a lot of other uses that are hazardous to the area that could happen there. Let's say SCNG/Dominion, I'm not really sure what they're called anymore, I think it's Dominion, now decides to sell or move or expand and need bigger space or more area, they can absolutely sell, and if it's rezoned PI2, the person that buys that land can do whatever they want to with whatever those uses are. I want to address the comp plan. So a lot of folks on town council campaigned against changing the comp plan. Of course, when it came to 1236 Melvin Bennett Road, right next to my house, they decided to vote in favor of amending that comp plan, therefore, in order to rezone that property next to my house from R1 to AB. And that was directly in conflict with what they actually campaigned on. I think we need to put less focus on actually thinking about, should we amend the comp plan, should we not amend the comp plan, and think about the quality of life for the people living in this town. We are your constituents, we are the citizens, and our value and our quality of life matters. So I'd appreciate you guys not approving the rezoning from AB to PI2 for Dominion. Thank you.
Kevin Cunane, I have two issues tonight. One, on masks. An individual that spoke earlier made the comment, if you don't wear a mask, you don't care. Let me tell you a little story. You know my history, you know who I am. We have a group of over 100 New York responders, most of which were present at the World Trade Center in one way, shape, or form or another. The vast majority of which have serious breathing issues. A lot of them have an exhalation problem. That makes wearing of a mask dangerous. So people, they can't wear it. They don't wear it because it's unhealthy for them. They're holding in the carbon dioxide, and it sickens them, so they can't wear it. These are people who risk their lives for a career. A lot of them far more impressive career than I had. And they're gonna be implied that they don't care. That's a disgrace. I want to thank Ms. Landing for mentioning that on the floor, that it doesn't indicate that you don't care if you can't wear a mask. Okay, I know some people like to make a fashion statement. I see the shamrocks, which is a religious symbolism on the mayor's face. Kind of ridiculous, but hey, you want to make a fashion statement out of a mask, that's great. But it's not uncaring if you don't wear it and you don't know the situation. Once I got involved in the mask situation, I had sexual assault survivors, more than one, tell me that they can't wear it because of flashback type issues. I had 2 veterans tell me the same thing. It doesn't mean that they don't care. And every time you hear that, somebody up there should stand up for the people that can't wear the mask. The other thing is that 5 o'clock meeting, people coming from 41, we managed to have a pretty good turnout, but that's completely tone deaf. Next time, maybe I'll bring a teddy bear for the mayor. He needs to start the meetings earlier. Every month, we hear about, oh, it's getting late. You know, every month you can listen to the meeting and you see about 8:30, somebody whining that it's late. If you can't handle a late meeting, resign. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Town Council. And Chief, thank you very much for protecting us. My name is Pamela Lee. I live on Slipper Shell Court, and I did not sign up to speak because I actually wondered, does it really matter if I get up here and say anything? Do you really listen to me? So I changed my mind. I decided I'm tired of sitting and not saying anything and standing up for myself and our rights and our Constitution. So here I am to ask you to please give us back our freedom to not wear a mask. I've followed your rule for almost a year now, and I have to wear a mask 6, 8, 10 hours a day, and I go home with headaches many, many days during the week. And so, again, I'm asking you to please give us our freedom back to not have to wear a mask and let it be our choice. I think we're smart Americans. We can choose when to wear it and when not to wear it. And to the gentleman that spoke earlier, we do care. If I was put in a situation where I felt like it was needed, I'm smart enough and educated enough to where I would choose to wear it if it benefited the other person. So thank you.
Is that it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Bob Rimmer, Arlington Park West. A couple things I want to mention today, and one of those is I left council on the end of 2019, and 3 months later, we're dealing with COVID, and dealing with masks, and dealing with civil unrest, and I just want to say I appreciate the years you guys have had dealing with all that. It sort of makes those extra 5 feet or zoning decisions that we had back in the day not quite so serious. So thank you for your service. Thanks for trying to sort through all this and deal with it. Second thing I want to talk about is transparency. And this goes back to the Phillips conversation from 5 o'clock. You know, in August 2020, it was announced that the preferred alternative was alternative 1. In September, the public comment period ended, and in October, the project staff came to Transportation Committee and presented alternative 1 to you all. From October through March of this year, radio silence. No communication at all until this new alternative was presented. And it really is not a revised plan, it's a brand new plan. That's not the Mount Pleasant way. Mount Pleasant does a lot of public hearings, a lot of special meetings, a lot of community meetings, because we want our residents to be informed of the information. And so springing something on residents and expecting a quick vote is just not the way we do things. And my ask tonight is perhaps for this council or for the mayor to reach out to our county council representatives and let them know that, you know, we like to do things differently here. We like more involvement from our residents, and request that a meeting be held with residents to explain the recommendations so that we can get some transparency in how the decision was made. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it?
Yes, sir.
All right. That closes item 6. public comment. Item 7, consent agenda items. There are no consent agenda items. Item 8 is planning. Keep in mind, items 1, 2, and 3 are first reading. We may not make amendments on these, so just a reminder.
Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. So this first item before you is an ordinance to annex an approximately 5-acre tract of land. It is located on Chandler Road, adjacent to Chandler Road at the end of Old Rosebud Trail.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous.
First reading, ordinance number 21017.
Next.
Yes, this next one is an almost 1-acre tract of land located at 4335 Tobacco Road in the Bulls Bay subdivision. You can see it on the comprehensive plan here. It will come in automatically annexed as R1.
Motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Mr. Chapman motion and Mr. Santos second. We're in discussion. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion to approve, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next.
First reading, ordinance number 21018.
Next.
Thank you, sir. This next proposal is the short-term rental text amendment. Just a little bit of background. Committee received an update on the entire program at their September 2020 meeting. At the October and November Planning and PJL Committee meetings, staff presented some issues and concerns, and at that time, we received recommendations from committee members. A couple of those recommendations included lowering the maximum number from 1% of the overall number of dwelling units to a hard number of 350. We also were looking at revising the enforcement provisions. We wanted to deal specifically with those working within the system and those operating outside of the system. And then we wanted to eliminate some inefficiencies in how the enforcement provision was written and some inconsistencies with our courts. Staff also had some minor revisions to make the program administration more efficient. We did present these to the Planning Commission at their February 17th meeting. They recommended denial of the amendments. They wanted it to, they didn't necessarily agree with some of the committee recommendations, so they forwarded it with a recommendation for denial. Staff then presented it to the committee at their March meeting, and here we are. So this has actually been updated. We've now issued about 391 permits as of today. About 300 of those, about 80%, are for whole house rentals where the owner does not live on site. As one of the persons mentioned earlier, we haven't had a lot of complaints. Most of our complaints were early on. They were for one neighborhood, one area. We got that straightened out. We really haven't had a complaint since November of 2020. We do still have a few that we're trying to get into compliance, but for the most part, it's running pretty efficiently. So just to go over a few of the major, well, it's not on here. So I'm going to go through a few of the major amendments. The first one was, and you should have received a copy of this in your packet. The first one was to make sure that it dealt primarily with residential and not commercial. Because you have to get a business license, that does not make it a commercial use. You have to get a business license to comply, but it is still a residential use. When folks come, they stay there, they sleep there, and then they go out and do what they do during the day, tourists or whatever. So we wanted to make it clear that it was for a residential dwelling unit, and then we used our residential dwelling unit definition from our zoning ordinance. We also indicated, as directed by committee, that there would be no more than 350. Keep in mind, we have issued 390. So once this goes through, if it gets adopted with that number, all of those that are in the queue, have been reviewed and have been permitted, they will be able to continue to operate so long as they stay in compliance annually. So that would be where the grandfathering status comes in. Another change we made was getting in alignment with renewal with our new business license ordinance, and then putting on some penalty fees. So if you have operated a short-term rental, and we give you this grace period for renewal, if you don't renew in time and you come in after that grace period, you actually have a $500 penalty. And so we looked at several things with committee. We looked at putting liens on properties. We looked at almost what you would do with a building permit. You would put a stop work order if they didn't have proper permits. So we explored several things, but in talking with our corporation counsel and meeting with our judges, we felt like the best way to do it was to attach some penalties and then beef up our public notification requirements. Sorry. And then one more thing we did want to fix in this is, there's a lot of scenarios with the short-term rentals, and I explained this to the committee. We have one situation where, we've had a house that's broken up into 2 houses, and each house has 3 separate bedrooms. They're renting out as 3 separate units, and if the owner is renting out these 3 units, they hop over to the other house. And so there's all kinds of loopholes in how this works. And so we can't contain all of them, but what we wanted to do was to try. And so we added sort of 3 scenarios where you can operate an STR. The first is what you would think of in the traditional sense. You live in your house and you operate it in terms of like a traditional bed and breakfast. You run it by operating out of up to 6 rooms in your home, and you live on site while people are staying at your house. The second one is to rent your whole house, which is, like I said, that's about 80% of our rentals. You rent your entire house and you live off-site. And then the third scenario is if you have an accessory dwelling unit, you can rent out one or the other, but you must live in one of those. And so we wanted to kind of make it clear for folks applying and going through the process that those were our scenarios, and that's how we wanted to kind of contain how this was occurring, because we know there's a lot of different things going on out there. So just to kind of get a little bit of control over it. And then last, like I said, we kind of worked on our enforcement with the help of legal. And that really had to do with how we supply notification when there's an offense. But essentially what we would have is you have your first offense, and then your second offense, your third is a penalty, and the fourth is revocation of your business license and your short-term rental permit. So we wanted to kind of clarify that. And that's really all I have. A lot of our other minor amendments for it have to do with things we ask for the application, the taxes, how we go about getting proof of those, just some things to make it easier to administer. And so that's all I have. If you're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay.
Mayor, I move to get it on the table. Move for approval to get it on the table for discussion.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion to approve and a second. Discussion. Ms. Santos?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, as the young lady said earlier, I've been on this council since this first started. We've been doing this for a long, long time. And we hear some of the same complaints. And there are some really good people that are doing it, and there's some people that apparently aren't doing it the right way. And, I was trying to think of how, this has taken up a lot of our staff's time to manage this. And I was just thinking and wondering and putting it out there for council, maybe we ought to have some type of commission, like the Old Village has the Historic Commission, where they kind of manage and approve or disapprove a lot of the things that go on, but they report back to the town. And I'm just thinking of a way to try and make this easier on our staff. And I think if we get some good people who are truly doing the right things with their short-term rentals to serve on a committee or a commission and report back to our staff. I think we ought to let them police themselves, because the good people are not going to let the bad people hurt them what they're trying to do. So that's just I'm putting it out there for discussion to see if it's something that we ought to be able to do to take it off of our staff. At the end of the day, the staff's going to have the final say. But I just think that we ought to have a group of them together and let them see if they can police themselves, and if not, then we can go back to doing it ourselves or however we want to do it.
Understand. Just want to add, this is for approval on first reading, which we can't amend, but maybe we can bring that up at second reading or something. Yes, sir. Mr. O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 comments. One,
I always question myself when I want to disagree with Mr. Santos. But Gary, I'm telling you, I sat in the planning committee last year for 2 years, and we almost had that and drove everybody crazy. I feel like there's enough data on your desk. It's not an easy decision, but I think putting a committee together again will just do what you don't want to do, and that's waste more time. That's just my opinion. Second part of this is I feel like, and I said this when I was on the planning committee, we're going to just make a decision and do something. But I have a couple of concerns with this. For example, and you have to remember that I'm the chair of the finance committee, all right? So we have an ordinance that kind of says you can have 350, but we have 391, but we don't want to disallow them, so we'll grandfather them in. But we really won't have any new ones until somebody comes off, right?
Yeah, so the
Yes.
ordinance, the proposed ordinance calls for 350.
Right.
Right now, the max is probably about 410.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, based on a lot of people's work, not only in staff, but owners of these properties, ensuring that the experience is positive and adult and working, you know, I wish we would look at more revenue to the town and maybe go more than 1%. And we have the system in place right now that polices this. And from everything I hear, it sounds like we're doing a pretty good job with that. Whenever we build a hotel, we all sit in here and love it because of all the money that comes in. This, in essence, is a way to help homeowners and to bring in more money for the town. I don't mean out of control, but I do believe that that this is an opportunity to, you know, and maybe I'm saying I don't think we do it all at one time, but a gradual increase over a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year period of time and see how that works. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Landing. Sorry.
So we did, even though I wasn't on planning committee for either of those periods of time, I certainly sat in on these short-term rental, and we also spent a lot of time on council talking about it. So first of all, I just want to say the 1% was a pretty good idea. I mean, it could easily be made a little bit more, but to now put a cap on it, we're a community that every time someone gets up and gives us a presentation, we find out that we have gone from 88,000 to 91 and now from 91 to 95. And we're going to sit here and tell people we're maxed out at 350 short-term rentals. I don't have a short-term rental, and I hope I never do, but I know for a fact that there are people who depend on that for their family's income. And I think that's extremely important to respect people's ability to do that. So we have a great effort that was put, I mean, tons of time was put into putting this into place. I don't know why we have to go back and change some of the things that are working well. And one of the other things addressing one of the public comments was we don't want to have such strong clusters. I believe one of the things we did was passed it so that it was limited in a certain area. No, we did not do that. I thought that was one of the things we did, that on a certain street, you can't just have like every house be, okay, I'm not really supposed to talk to other council members, sorry. But, so that, maybe that is something we need to think about, is that needs to be in there. But I'm probably going to vote against this tonight because we can't amend, but then if we amend, we'll take a look and see what the amendments look like.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Whitley.
So one of the reasons that we wanted to institute this cap, and there was actually some debate within the planning committee over what that cap should be, and there was, because there was a suggestion that it be the current 1%, which is about 410, and then there was a suggestion that it be the 350 so that we actually reduce the number of short-term rentals in the town overall. So there was actually some discussion on committee over what that number should be. So I think that's something that is definitely open for discussion and debate and amendment at the second reading of this. I think everything else that is on that are necessary changes that are going to help with the enforcement, and there's just some administrative things on there. With the cap, part of the reason for that is being a hard number, is that with all of the HOAs in town, as that 1% increases, as our housing stock increases, that 1% increase is just going to concentrate short-term rentals in the older parts of town that do not have the HOAs and change the character of those communities. And with 80% of these being whole house rentals, these are investors coming in, buying up properties and using them as short-term rentals. This is the number of people using this as a as the percentage of people using this to stay in their home or as a, you know, they live there and then they rent out a room is much smaller. So I'm comfortable with there being a cap at the 1% number as it is currently, which is 410 rentals, which gives us some flexibility for additional ones. But I do think that moving to a hard number makes sense for our community simply because of the nature of the HOAs and the newer developments and how this, an unending cap is going to create a completely changed character of neighborhoods. Because the housing prices have gone up, right? Like it makes sense for investors to buy these properties and make maximum dollars through short-term rentals.
Right. No other comment? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Hyatt.
I think this hard number, we talked a lot about how we might limit it in certain areas, and no one could come up with a good plan for that. I thought it should be possible, but somehow they kept saying there wouldn't be a way to limit them.
Not legally.
Yeah. So, you know, the hard number is what came up. And one thing I mentioned was if our concern is more the whole house rentals, that we might consider the 1% for people that live there. And that might help them subsidize. And so kind of be a compromise. So that's something we could look into, or if we could have ideas for how to limit and keep them from clustering in one area, you know, I'm open to that. But this seemed to be the simplest thing to solve that problem. I did have one other question that I didn't ask at committee. Do people lose, if they live there, and do this like one room with their primary residence, do they lose the 4% tax? I know they do in the city of Charleston, so I wondered if they lose that tax, primary residence tax exemption.
I don't think they do if they live on site and they're renting out one bedroom.
Yeah, in Charleston, if you apply and get a permit, you lose that.
I think at
You
some
pay,
point
it
you
jumps
do.
to 6%.
Yeah, I think there is a point where you hit a proportion. So the proportion that you're renting out is at 6%, and then the other proportion stays at 4%. I think that applies. So.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was something that we had addressed or considered.
And ma'am, that is a
And that
county
helps
issue.
with revenue.
Yeah, that's a county, all of Charleston County. So,
Right.
and they do ask on that 4% form. As I sit here, I don't know the exact formula, but I'll determine that. I'll figure that out.
Yeah, that's something we should be looking at. Okay, that's it.
All right. All right. Yes, sir. Mr. Rambo.
I just wanted to echo what Ms. Hyatt said. I feel like there's a difference between, you know, the out-of-town investor that's renting a whole house versus the person who is using it to rent their ADU or vice versa, or rent out a bedroom or two. So I would be a fan of, I guess at second reading, between now and then we'll have to come up with something to somehow kind of allow more of those since what did you say, 80% of, 70% of the ones are whole house rentals. I think we could almost allocate them differently in those three categories. I feel like to give some more flexibility there would be my preference. So.
All right. And before we vote, I'll add too, I spoke with Mr. Paglarini yesterday. There's some things about enforcement, and I spoke with Ms. Bixler about we want to keep those who are our licensed people doing it well. We want to make sure that they don't lose out and call it the lottery, so that they would be grandfathered in. I think that's important, like what somebody mentioned, the devil, you know. Well, I'm not calling you a devil, but you know, we don't want to get the others in there that we don't know that might cause problems when we have perfectly good operators who are licensed, and we want to keep them licensed if that's what they want. So we can make all of those amendments on second reading. Yes,
Sorry,
sir.
I do have one further question I meant to ask. When it talks about the occupancy, and it says like 2 people per bedroom or whatever, what is that definition? I mean, does like a baby count? I mean, I guess a baby counts as a person, or, I mean, it's like, so I have a family of 5. I'm going to rent a 2-bedroom place. Is that allowed or not allowed?
I would say if there was an infant, there would be some discretion there. Presumably it's for adults per bedroom.
Okay.
So.
Okay. All right, so the motion is to approve. And again, this is first reading. We can make amendments on second reading, so I'll just do this by voice. All in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
2, yes, okay. So by 7-2, first reading passes.
First reading, ordinance number 21019.
This brings us to old business, item number 1, which is final reading, having to
Motion
do
to
with
approve.
non-conforming lots and structures.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. It was very cool.
Final reading, ordinance number 21007.
Item number 2, please.
This is an annexation of a tract of land at 1051 Theodore Road. If you'll recall, this came in with a request to also zone R4. That request was denied, but the applicant would like to continue on.
Motion to approve.
Annex in as
Second.
R1.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Final reading, ordinance number 21009.
Next.
This is the request for final reading to rezone the property on Chuck Dolly Road, almost 5 acres, from AB to PI2.
Motion to deny.
Second.
All right, hold on just a second. We have a motion to deny and a second. We are in discussion. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to say some of the same things I said last time. We have answered from Dominion the major issues that were raised about the trees, about the detention pond, to put these vehicles in a garage and how they will be going straight instead of backing up. I think the issue is that our staff tried very hard to come up with a way within our ordinances that they could improve the property. That's what they're trying to do. They're simply trying to improve the property. Those other issues that have been brought up as, way out there, because you got to go to BOZA. You got to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to get to do a lot of those things that are in question, if you will. I don't think Mount Pleasant Waterworks is going to put a treatment plant at that location. It's too valuable, and it costs too much when they can find others. So I'm going to vote for this. I think it's the right thing to do. If our staff could have found a way for them to make the improvements, they would. But under our ordinances, there is not a solution that's available. So I'm going to vote for this.
Yes, ma'am?
So there's no way to add that special exemption to that zoning as that gentleman commented during public comments?
Ma'am, it would be a violation of state law to condition zoning. I think, I don't want to put words in Mr. Chapman's mouth, but I think what he's suggesting is if for some of the concerns, there is another level of approval, specifically through BOZA.
Okay, thanks. Sounded so good.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Lanning.
So this one seemed a little bit more obvious at the first meeting, and then we got an awful lot of input from the public and the neighbors, including the gentleman that was here tonight and several ladies that were here tonight, but also a lot of things in writing with very much detail. This is a toughie because, again, zoning is a major change. It's not a little thing, and it's a fairly permanent thing. We can say all we want to about Dominion wants to do this, and they're going to do this, but it's not just what Dominion wants to do. It's what can happen 20, 30, 40 years down the road, and this being zoned differently than it is right now. This is just not, I don't know, there's not enough of this that is comfortable. I just feel at this point that what we see is no, we're not going to see a wastewater plant. Nobody's saying that. There just happens to be a list of things that can happen with public institution too, and that zoning will be there ongoing if we change this tonight. So for that reason, I'm going to be voting in favor of the motion that is denying tonight and have people go back to the drawing board on this one.
Anyone else? All right, so we'll vote. I think we're going to need to do a roll call. And remember, the motion is to deny, so a yes vote is to deny the application. Would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Landing.
I vote yes.
Ms. Landing votes yes. Mr. O'Rourke.
Yes.
Mr. O'Rourke votes yes. Mr. Rambo.
Yes.
Mr. Rambo votes yes. Mr. Santos.
Yes.
Mr. Santos votes yes. Ms. Whitley.
Yes.
Ms. Whitley votes yes. Mr. Chapman.
No.
Mr. Chapman votes no. Ms. Corley.
Yes.
Ms. Corley votes yes. Ms. Hyatt.
Yes.
Ms. Hyatt votes yes. Mayor Haney.
No.
Mayor Haney votes no.
So 7-2, the motion is denied. All right, item number 3, please.
As you recall, last month, there was a petition to annex and zone 1240 6 Mile Road.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second, and remind everyone this is only the annexation.
Yes, sir.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Final reading, ordinance number 21012.
Does anybody need to take a break? Y'all made me promise to take, yes, okay. We will take a 5-minute break, and when we come back, we will be on item 9, committee action items.
Thank you.
Just let me know.
I didn't want to have to walk out of here.
All right, we are reconvened after a brief break. And we're on item 9, committee action items. Let's have order on council, please. Transportation Committee, possible action with regard to the scenic byway corridor management plans for Mathis Ferry and Long Point Road. There you are. I couldn't find you. I thought I was going to have to do this from memory.
I think I may have done that before. Mayor, this item was really spearheaded by Mr. Chapman and some others starting last year to really protect our two legislatively scenic designated highways in town of Mount Pleasant, which is Mathis Ferry Road, Long Point Road, from de-designation. And to do that, it's helpful for the corridors to have corridor management plans. So those were developed. They were taken before committee. There are 2 individual plans that will be submitted to the Department of Transportation, so that they're on file, and that will kind of guard against that de-designation. And it'll give staff an opportunity to develop some of the action plans within those documents to start doing them. And some vegetative management, signage, some other things that are pretty easy for the town to do. So that's what's before you tonight, is really a request to adopt those CMPs and submit it to DOT.
Okay. We have a motion for approval and a second. It did come from the committee. It was well received and got the endorsement of the committee. Is there any discussion?
No, my only discussion is to thank Mr. Morrison for spearheading this and getting it done. I tried to work several years ago to do the same thing because, again, we were told it was going to be de-designated, and it's just a good thing for us, and those are important corridors within our town. Thank you, Brad.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, so we have a motion to approve. If there's no discussion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all very much. Item 10 is council business, new business, first reading of a series and supplemental ordinance.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve and a second, and we have folks from Waterworks here to address this. Yes, sir. Mr. Rambo.
Mount Pleasant Waterworks team presented to the Water Supply Committee. It was also discussed on the Finance Committee. Long story short, it's a great time to refinance. This will save our taxpayers/ratepayers a significant amount of money. And it got unanimous approval on the water supply and the finance. So if everybody's okay, I'd like to move forward. I don't feel like they have to give another presentation, if that's okay with everyone.
Unless there are any questions. All right. Remind me, did we do the motion?
I did
Yes,
motion.
you did. That's right.
I seconded it.
That's
Yes.
right. We got it. So the motion is to approve. If there's no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
First reading, ordinance number 21020.
Turning the page, first reading of an ordinance to approve of a lease agreement with Trident Technical College.
I could do it, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
Ms. Kotov, this is simply extending the lease we have with Trident Tech. It's for 5 years. We cover any major maintenance, but they handle the day-to-day improvements and all that stuff.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
First reading, ordinance number 21021.
Item number 3, first reading of an ordinance granting an easement to Mount Pleasant Waterworks on property.
Approval.
Second.
Have a motion to approve and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
First reading, ordinance number 21022.
We are on item number 4, and just we'll preface this that we have to adjust our business license timing because of a new state law. Otherwise, we wouldn't be messing with it. So, Ms. Kotoff, if you'll walk us through this, please.
Yes, sir. So the state has adopted the South Carolina Business License Tax Reform Act effective January 2022. Included in the act is the standardization of the periods for the business license. And so it requires that all business licenses expire April 30th, 2022, so that they will come in conformance with the new act. Our renewals will go out in June, and so we're requesting our current existing ordinance to be amended so that the License expires April in conformance with the act. The businesses will still pay once a year. However, because of the state code, they will have to pay 2 months early. And before December 31st, we'll be bringing to you a new ordinance to repeal and replace our existing.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
First reading, ordinance number 21023.
Item number 5 is an ordinance to amend Chapter 132.04 of the Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances entitled Disturbing Schools Prohibited. I will let Mr. Pagliarini go through this. I think we all have a copy of that. I was just looking at mine. So.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. This was brought before the Police Judicial and Legal Committee related to our code section 132.04, and the title is Disturbing Schools Prohibited. The purpose of the change, the amended ordinance, is to expand the definition of schools to include child care facilities, and so there is no question at all. It's schools, child care facilities, college premises. Child care facilities includes facilities by whatever name, whole or in part, or any part of a daycare for children who are under 18. So it gives us more teeth in our ordinance to take care of situations where these types of organizations are disturbed. And I would say it would include our camps as well.
Yes.
Move to approve.
Thank you. And this came through Police, Judicial, and Legal. All right. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
First reading, ordinance number 21024.
Sorry, I wrote that one wrong. Item number 6, first reading of an ordinance to amend Code of Ordinances related to placing matters on council agendas. This also, didn't that come? Yeah, that was PJL. Yeah. Mr. Rambo, do you want to elucidate?
Basically, this arose, so the way our council rules currently are, any member can request an item to be on a committee, whether the committee chair puts it on there or not, it can then go to full council. Outside of that normal process, either the mayor or 3 individual council members can get together and call a special meeting and talk about anything they want. It arose when I wanted to bring up the beach bill, didn't have the information in time for committee, but we were meeting the next week anyway, and so it kind of created this a little bit of a loophole. I could have called a special meeting with 2 other folks, but instead, we were able to put it on the regular council meeting agenda, but this is just formalizing being able to do that. So basically, it's saying that any 3 council members, not only can they call a special meeting, but they can put an item on a regular council agenda without the normal process.
Good motion.
And a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Hang on just a second. To approve. Let me keep my motion straight. Yes, were you asking me?
I was going to ask
Mr.
a
Hurley.
question if I could, Jake, and help me, because does this mean now that one council member alone cannot put it doesn't mean that?
It doesn't mess with that process at all.
So
So
this
that's
is the
still in place, so one council member can still go through the process and have anything they want.
Okay.
This is just, if it didn't go through committee, there's a process to still
Bring
put it on there.
forward.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
All right. Again, this is first reading. Any other comments? All in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
First reading, ordinance number 21025.
Number 7 is a resolution in support of revising the South Carolina House and Senate districts in order to provide equitable representation for the citizens of the town of Mount Pleasant. This
Move to
also-
approve.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. Let me, since this did come through the committee I chair, just point out, we are not dictating House and Senate districts in this resolution. I hope everybody's had a chance to read it. It says, therefore, the town of Mount Pleasant supports the adoption of district boundaries which provides its citizens an equitable measure of representation in the South Carolina House of Representatives and the Senate. That's what we are saying. All right, so we have a motion to approve and a second. Any comments, any
Yes, sir.
discussion? Yes, sir.
Mayor and members of council, we now have 3 senators, maybe 4, because I think Senator Kimpson might have a sliver of our area. I don't want to do anything to alienate any of our senators. They're going to make this decision. We're not going to make it. And it's their responsibility, just like it's our responsibility to pass ordinances. So again, we are telling senators who we need for help and House members who we need for help how to do their job. And I just don't think it's right. So I'm going to vote against it.
Yes, sir. Mr. Santoff.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I don't see that as us telling them how to do their jobs. And I think, being the 4th largest municipality in the state of South Carolina, we need to have our own representation, that's all. But it's certainly not a slant to anybody, any elected official. I haven't taken it as a slant. I think they're doing a good job, but I think that we need to control our own destiny.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Landing.
I would also agree on that because right now, and the write-up was very interesting in the paper about it, and the gentleman that spoke, actually, it was Brian Hicks referencing his commentary. And I actually do think it's true. When you have someone like Senator Grooms is a great senator, he's out in Bono Beach, and the other fellow's up in, Murrells Inlet or something. And I mean, there are different issues. That doesn't take away from Larry Grooms or the other fellow or anybody else, because if it changes slightly and we now have someone who actually would live in Mount Pleasant that represents us, that's not necessarily saying that there wouldn't still be slivers of Mount Pleasant that would be represented by other people. But it would make sense if Mount Pleasant at least had one district that was within the 95,000 people that live here.
Any other comments?
I just want to add, they are required to make the districts equal in terms of population. So when you start doing that, you may get 1 senator and that's it. So I'm just, that's why I'm voting against this, simply because they have to do it. The law requires them to do it every 10 years with the census, and they have to make the districts equal in population.
Okay. All right, we have a motion to approve. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, so by 8 to 1, the resolution is adopted.
Resolution 21031.
Section B, old business. Number 1 is final reading of an ordinance to amend the budget. Mrs. Kotoff, again, will give us the debits and credits and the dollars and cents. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. So this is the final reading of the ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2021 budget. The first 3 items you see were included in it. Then you see that coming out of the Finance Committee is a recommendation to add a 3-member stormwater crew and the equipment as well to this amendment.
All right.
Move for approval?
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second. We are in discussion. Yes, sir, Mr. Rambo.
So I am not against potentially adding a 3-member stormwater crew and equipment. I do feel like we should consider this as part of our normal budget process going into the next fiscal year instead of rushing to do it right this second. I know I asked questions at the Finance Committee, and I was hoping for some kind of presentation or something. I still don't know exactly what these folks are going to do. And then there are also issues that I'm concerned about, like if we start cleaning the ditches on Mathis Ferry Road, which is the state's responsibility, then they're just going to quit doing it, and now all of a sudden we have the financial burden. And I don't know. I'm not exactly clear what this crew is going to do, and so I will vote against this. But again, it's not because I don't think we should eventually have this. I just think it should be more of a discussion.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Landing.
I actually thought we did go through some of the detail on this, and one of the things was it wasn't just drainage ditches on Mathis Ferry. For instance, the example that the fellow gave us today about Old Village on William Street and then Royal Avenue, and there's drainage ditches there that get clogged up with leaves and a lot of this. So it was pretty well described that what has come to pass with all the work we've been doing in drainage and so forth is that there was a realization that we needed 3 more people to do this. We did have a hiring freeze in place this past year because of COVID, and so this is in some ways somewhat of a makeup too for the fact that we needed these folks. So I would hate to tell staff when this is something that they have determined we really need, no, we don't see that we need to add this, because I think it looks like we definitely do. And we also know we're going forward with some very important stormwater projects now, so I think we need all the help we can get.
Mr. Rambo?
I was just gonna say, this was not a staff recommendation. This was
wasn't?
no, this was a recommendation that came directly from a council member. So this was not a staff initiated saying, we need this to happen right now. This was a request from a council member. And that's why I said I just feel like it should be part of the normal budget process when we do those discussions.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
this was discussed when we were doing the budget in May. It was discussed extensively, and the staff member did say they could use it. And the idea being that we're spending over $10 million in the Old Village this year. As far as the other parts of the town, they're going to have to wait to get any improvements. This at least recognizes the need in other parts of the town to have some relief when the ditches start to get full. So that's the whole point. It was discussed in the budget this year to begin with. So I disagree with the fact it needs to go to budget. It went to a budget, full budget, when we were discussing it in May.
Thank you. All right. Yes, ma'am.
I would just rather wait until the next budget process as well, just to get more information on what we're going to be doing exactly. Can you hear me? Yes?
I'm confused.
Those are just my 2 cents, so I will not vote for this as well.
Okay. Any other comments before we vote? All right, we'll try a voice vote. The motion is to approve, and this is item 1. All in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, so the motion passes 6-3.
Final reading, ordinance number 21014.
Item number 2 is final reading of ordinance to amend Chapter 41 of the Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances entitled Civil Emergencies. This had to do...
Motion to approve?
We have a motion to approve and a second. We are in discussion. Yes, sir, Mr. Chapman.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose an amendment.
Yes, sir.
The amendment would be that for any future proclamation regarding emergency issues under the emergency ordinance, that the time of duration cannot be longer than 61 days. And I'll make that in the form of motion.
We have a motion for an amendment. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a second. I strongly agree with that, and the rationale for that is that, as we discussed with Mr. Pagliarini, emergency ordinances of council by state law expire in 61 days, and I think to be consistent that emergency proclamation should. And that having been said, having just been through the first pandemic in 100 years, I don't think we will ever have an emergency that lasts that long. However, I did clear up with Mr. Pagliarini that you can reissue things should future councils, mayors, or whatever have those. There's nothing that stops you from reissuing, but they do have to expire. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Under this proposed amendment, it would be subject to reissue depending on circumstances, at least, unless there are further amendments or I understand the amendment correct, or the proposed amendment correctly.
Correct.
Right. All right.
Mayor, I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chapman, you said future. I'm asking about if you could help me out with future, so I
Well,
understand.
I would think we might have another proclamation at some point. Not the current one, but whatever the next, if there is one, proclamation is, that 61-day period would start at the end of that, when the new proclamation might be issued.
Yes, sir. So this would exempt anything current, is my question.
Correct.
Okay. And
All right. That's in the motion, future proclamations. Any discussion? All right, we're voting on the amendment. The motion is to approve. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the amendment passes. So we are now on the main ordinance, which we also have a motion to approve. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Lanning.
I also would like to propose an amendment. Somehow when I spoke up, and I did have to leave because we had a ribbon cutting and I was the only person that was able to go, it was bad timing all the way around, but I had brought up in the committee for PJL items 4103A and B, and actually items C, D, E, and F, not to include G, where there's a curfew. So if you read each one of these, and I'll read them because otherwise we need to hear it on the record. Prohibit, C is, which has been changed over to A, but C is prohibit or regulate any demonstration, parade, march, vigil, or participation therein from taking place on any of the public ways or any public property. This would mean, again, not that this mayor is doing this, but that a mayor in the future, if it's left like this, could actually cancel things unilaterally the day before they're supposed to happen. There's not even time at that point for the rest of council to meet and try to override that. Same thing with it just, again, it's almost like against a freedom of speech type of thing, because demonstrations, vigils, things like that should be allowed, and it should, if we're going to do any of these things, it should be an act of council, not an act of one person. Same thing with the rest of them, but I'll read them quicker. Prohibit or regulate the sale or use of gasoline. I don't think I need to go through naphtha and all that, but prohibit or regulate travel on any public street or any of the public property. Well, a curfew would cover that. If you need a curfew for an emergency purpose, and there are definitely times that could come up, that would be covering that. Prohibit or regulate the participation in or carrying on of any business activity, and prohibit or regulate the keeping open of places of business, places of entertainment, and any other place of public assembly. Again, these are things that I think are a big deal for one person to have the control over. So the biggest emergency powers that make a lot of sense to have, and this whole thing came to light when we realized this was the ordinance that the mask ordinances were under, was that you should be able to have a curfew if the mayor needs to. And the other thing is to be able to call out a state national guard, ask the governor for a state national guard if for some reason it's gotten beyond what our local first responders can handle. And so I would like to amend that we actually take all of those out of 4103 except for the ability to do a curfew.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Can you give us the specifics of the motion, please?
The specifics of the motion is that the specific restrictions authorized under 4103 would be limited to being able to establish hours during which a curfew shall be in effect.
What number is that?
That is the last one, which was G, and right now it says E in the new amended. So it's the last one.
So you would be removing which ones?
A, B, C, D, E, and F. And again, this is not to say that if there was ever a need that we wouldn't have a meeting with council. I'm just saying for a mayor unilaterally to be able to make a proclamation on these.
Comments? Yes, sir, Ms. Chapman.
Yes, sir. Ms. Lanning, I can understand some of this, what you're trying to do. And I'm not going to put our police chief on the spot, but I've been in some emergencies where it was critical very fast to stop people from congregating on the street. And this says we can't do that. What you want to do says we can't do that.
Doesn't.
And all I'm saying is these were put in here, I'm sure, to copy other emergency ordinances and the need for certain restrictions that have to take place. And I can think of an example with what happened in May. With what happened in May, downtown Charleston, where they were really trying to get across. And in that being the case, it would have been good to have something for the chief to be able to handle other than his own doing it, to have some backup.
Okay, so again, it was handled extremely expertly.
It was.
We were very proud
I
of
don't
our
disagree with
chief
that.
and our police department, our fire department, everybody that helped with that. And again, that's still available. What we're talking about here is having our mayor, and I don't mean Mayor Haney, that's not the point here. This was never about Mayor Haney. This is about, once we got into this situation of having an ongoing emergency for a whole year, as opposed to something that's immediate. And one thing, it opened up this, taking a look at this thing, and this has prohibitions against basic rights that are in our Bill of Rights of the U.S. Constitution. It doesn't make sense to unilaterally be able to have the mayor cancel a parade the night before. What if that had happened? That's not what happened. Not blaming Will Haney at all, because he didn't do that. In fact, he very much respected the fact that it was a vote in favor. But what I'm saying is that these are things that were set up 20, 30 years ago that give an awful lot of power to one person that we didn't even, probably most of us, realize was in here. But now that we do, I think it's our responsibility to both make sure the public's aware of it and to try to limit those powers. We're a council as a strong council, and we work together to solve problems, except in a serious emergency where the police, the fire, all the first responders, and even the mayor with a curfew and/or calling out the state guard if we need it. And those things would all still be in there.
Let me ask clerk, were you able to get the motion? You're giving me a look.
Is it the restrictions authorized, are you asking to remove A through F, or just the mayor having the authority to impose those restrictions?
To remove the restrictions of A through F and only maintain the restriction of the curfew. Now, there is another page, it's not on here for some reason, but part of this ordinance, I can tell you where it is, part of this ordinance that's currently in place says it's 4106, authority to request state police and military forces. So if it says in the sound discretion of the mayor, it shall appear that an emergency is, or an imminent emergency is likely to be of such proportions that the means available to the municipality to maintain law and order within the municipality and the police jurisdiction thereof are insufficient for such purpose, the mayor shall make written request to the governor that such police or military forces may be necessary, blah, blah, blah. So that's actually a separate thing, and that's still part of this ordinance. So we're only talking about 4103, that instead of just removing A and B, we would remove all but G, the curfew ability.
Mr. O'Rourke.
Miss Landy, my friend, it's sounding to me like this needs to probably be discussed at some committee level, at something, so that when this comes to us, we'll all understand it and go from there. Not that we're not understanding it, but this is kind of new for everyone. And it doesn't sound like a simple amendment to me. It sounds a little deeper than that. And if it is deeper than that, I think it probably should go to some committee so that we can get something really clear for us to be discussed and then brought to us. Just my thought.
I asked for this to be on the PJ&L committee meeting in December. And it went there, and I was told, we can't make any changes to an emergency ordinance until COVID is over. So then I tried to bring it up to our council in that is what they said, and they did not even advance it to council for us to discuss that month. So then in January, I brought it to the council meeting that we need to talk about this whole ordinance and what it says and the things that are in there, because this was written many, many years ago. From what I understand, at least 20, maybe 30 years ago. A lot of things have changed since then. And even in that meeting, it was said, we can't really make these changes right now because this is too much. I was saying we should limit the time, or we should make some kind of restrictions so that there's not such broad powers under one person's ability. This is not about our current mayor. This is about an ordinance that is way too broad in what it allows one person to do. And at that time, I was kind of mocked, and we didn't do anything. We said, well, let's send it back to committee. Then when it came out of committee, it only had A and B, and they called it the Beer and Guns Amendment. Now that's exactly what was said, and now my feeling on that is that's kind of mocking some pretty important rights that citizens have. So I don't think this is going really complicated. If you read through each one of these abilities, prohibit or regulate a demonstration, parade, march, vigil, or participation from taking place on any public way or any public property. Again, why would our mayor need to have emergency proclamation ability to do
Let's
that?
ask Chief Ritchie.
If they have the ability to do curfews and they have the ability to call out emergency services.
Chief, I know you're retiring, but there would be times when there might be an assembly that you had law enforcement concerns about when you don't have time to convene a quorum of council and pass an ordinance. You and I have discussed this back in the summer a little bit, because I wondered the same thing, why that was on there. Same thing I wondered about fuel. That's if you've got people burning the place down and doing Molotov cocktails, you can shut off the sale of fuel so that the town doesn't burn down, so you protect other people's properties. So if you will have something to add, I know I put you on the spot, but if...
That's all right, I don't mind being put on the spot. I feel, as the police chief and this police department, we have the authority now to do what I need to do. I think it was clear in May, I had that authority when I stopped what was going on at the bridge. Felt like I had that authority a week later when we had a very peaceful unity march over that same bridge that we participated in. So as with the state laws on municipal ordinances, federal laws in place, I believe I have what I need, the police department has what it needs to handle an immediate incidents going on. So that's my perspective on that.
Good. Okay.
And can I?
Yes, sir.
Can I add one more thing? And he has a boss. I mean, I think that, and I don't know if this is true, but I'm sure you and Eric are talking. I mean, he's available 24/7. So, and I trust both of your judgments and whoever's next judgment, quite frankly. So, I think emergency means emergency. It means like right now, and we just aren't going to have the opportunity for anybody to do anything but these two people to say, we got to act. And I think that that's part of, in my opinion, it's part of our role in trusting, I think, for that. That's just my 2 cents.
Ms. Whitley, yes, you haven't spoken yet.
Yes, so I just want to say for what Ms. Landing, the amendment she's made, I feel is perfectly proper to make at this point in time. This has been through our committee, and we did not choose to make those full amendments, but I think that we did fully go through the ordinance, and our committee is only, 4 people of members of council, so I think that, I don't think it makes sense to try and push Ms. Landing to send this back to committee. I think that addressing it here and now at council is the right avenue, because this has already been through PJ&L multiple times.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I will point out that this is final reading, and which is why she's able to mention amendments, but we did discuss this at committee, and we suggested changes, and this is the final reading. We had eliminated some things, and we all voted on it for first reading, so I felt comfortable with what we had discussed in committee and where we ended up with it, because we did make some changes. And we can all get together and, we can call a special meeting and undo anything that's done. So that's always, in my mind, it makes me feel a little more comfortable about it. And it's now for Mr. Chapman to put a definite deadline on it. That helps as well. So that's 2 things that makes me feel a lot better about it. But we had made amendments to this.
Let me ask one question for
brought us today.
clarification. The one about for doing mask, that fell under the one, and I cannot find the letter. Where's the one about businesses? Where's business?
Here, it was F in the original.
Prohibit or regulate the keeping open of businesses, places, regulate. So part of that is the mask, and I don't know if the purpose of this is to try to end the current mask proclamation that runs out on April 15th. But that's what you would effectively be doing, or if this is to apply to future things. But if we had a situation where health professionals were saying, y'all need to make these changes, there's nothing in there for health stuff. So the reason we do that is so that we can do it for businesses. So if that particular one has to be part of this, of course, I would have to vote against that because we'd be invalidating basically what we've got currently going on with the mask ordinance right now, which in my meeting yesterday with the president of the medical university and the chief operating officer, they asked me to please use their name and tell this council to please not use a method to get rid of the mask ordinance just yet while we're sending 4 million people into pharmacies to get vaccinated so that we can put all this behind us. And so if that stays in there, I will certainly be voting against that because, in effect, without debating mask, we will pass an amendment that makes the current mask proclamation invalid.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I didn't even know that the mask ordinance was in here until someone pointed that out to me today. So this whole thing about the mask ordinance, I didn't even know we were talking about masks tonight. The reason I think it's important that we eliminate A through F, and I'll just go to F since that's the one, is it says that prohibit or regulate the participation or carrying on of any business activity and prohibit or regulate the keeping open of places of business, places of entertainment, and any other place of public assembly. We've seen the damage done with the lockdowns that occurred, and luckily in Mount Pleasant, partly because when an ordinance was brought to us to copy what they were doing in Charleston, I immediately saw at the bottom that the enforcement was to send our business people to jail if they didn't follow it as one of the possible enforcements. We didn't actually do that. So we had a limited period of time where things were closed down, and then they opened up mostly under the governor's orders. So that wasn't the idea at all. But if one person has the ability to close down businesses, that's a lot of power for one person to have, especially in a town where we have a strong council. It also isn't normally something that needs to be done. Most emergency things that would have to be done related to a business, that decision could be made by our chief of police or our town administrator if it really was like that. But no, this was not about, and this isn't even about saying that if we vote on this amendment tonight and it passes, that it has to go into effect tomorrow. I didn't even talk about timing, so I would think timing would be a separate issue. If it needs to go into effect April 15th or whatever, I mean, whatever it needs to be, but I just feel that we, this council, should take the responsibility to clean up this ordinance.
Any other? Yes, sir, Mr. Chapman.
I'd like to bring up one other thing.
Okay.
Yes, we have a great police chief, and he did a great job during the riots downtown. We have an equally great town administrator. But the buck stops with us. So if there's any lawsuit brought on one of these two gentlemen, they need backup. And that's us. We're the backup. And we take all this out. We're not backing them up. We're saying, you're on your own. Go do it. I hope it works out okay. If you go to court, you might lose, and it's your fault. We're the backup. So that's all I'm saying.
I don't agree.
Hold on, please, Mr. O'Rourke.
I think they've got better judgment. And I don't mean to say that, Nate. I don't mean that as a joke. I mean, that gentleman's trained way more than we are on anything that he would face. And it's like a lot of things. I don't trust my judgment. I go to the people that actually know how to do that. And I know there's emergency training he's going to. I know that there's journals that he reads and classes that he takes. And again, it's not just him, it's the next one. And I actually trust their judgment
Mr.
better.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, again, I think we're getting so far off track here. This is an ordinance that allows the mayor unilaterally to do proclamations. Again, nothing against our current mayor. This is something that's been on the books a long time, and I bet it hasn't been examined like this because we haven't had a year-long emergency before. So now that we do have this situation and we look at this, it's not at all, Councilman Chapman, that, or anyone else, that I'm saying that that we're not responsible for decisions we make. Of course, we're here to back up, and we both support and direct as needed. But at the same time, this is about saying that the mayor can unilaterally do these things. And I just feel that in a strong council environment, we should be limiting the mayor's authority to do things unilaterally, not having it be this extensive. And this is a very extensive ordinance. So that was my amendment, and it's been.
May I ask for one thing of clarity on that? Would you amend your amendment to say for future? Because I don't want word to go out of here tonight that, like, people that have made vaccination appointments in pharmacies while we have a mask ordinance, a mask proclamation, excuse me, all of a sudden find out tomorrow that when it was not on the agenda tonight, that using that portion invalidates that proclamation.
I'm happy to amend the amendment to remove A through F of Section 4103, leaving just G regarding a curfew, and have this go into effect at the end of the current proclamation, which I believe is April 15th.
To be even more precise, is any proclamation issued after tonight?
Yeah, for issues, yeah, any proclamation. Again, it wasn't intended to end the mask
Sure.
ordinance. That wasn't
Right.
even on my thought process. This was
Okay.
about this ordinance, not about masks.
Okay. All right. So who was the second? Gary? All right. So you second. So we have a change to the amendment. It would be effective on future proclamations. All right. Thank you for that clarification. Who had their hand up? Was it Mr. Rambo? Okay.
Yeah, so I've wrestled with this one a little bit, even back in a year ago, last March. As you guys know, I felt very strongly that when there was talk of closing businesses, that should have been that should be a council decision, and I brought it up at that time, and since then. And I realized at that time that during that particular point, it was not the right time to bring it up. And as we've gone on with this, I've always felt like once we're through this, that we need to take a hard look at this, because I'm all for civil rights and liberty, and there are things in here that give me a lot of pause for one person to have the power to unilaterally do. So anyway, the reason I wanted to wait until after it was all over is because I didn't want there to be any sort of personal feelings about it. It's just, if I closed my eyes and said, how do I want my government, my town government to run, I would rather many of these decisions be made by a team of by an elected body, as opposed to unilaterally by one person. And so that's my feeling on it.
Yes, sir. Mr. O'Rourke.
Then it's not an emergency.
Right.
Correct.
Yes.
Well, okay, so then the other thing is, hearing the police chief, so when we closed off the bridge, when people were coming over, I don't believe there was a mayoral proclamation that allowed you to do that, was there? That was your judgment, and, yeah, so.
He was doing
We
it
did,
anyway.
we did have one, and I mentioned
For
this last
curfews,
time,
yeah.
for a curfew, to give us the power to get people off the streets if they spilled over. So that's definitely necessary. I want to just clarify two things. One, all of this is there because we have a council form of government, and council put it there. And so there is no, there is nothing that gives whoever occupies the mayor's chair any of the things of a strong mayor: budgeting, the budget, hiring, firing, or directing staff. So even when proclamations were used during this, which whoever thought we would be in a once-in-a-century, situation, there was no direction of staff. It was up to staff to execute it and carry it out. And the other thing I just want to say for the record is that I don't know how many days we have been under a proclamation, but council has not convened. There has not been a special meeting to modify or recall any of those. And the term unilaterally using it is used, but council could veto it tomorrow and repeal it tomorrow. That has not happened the times that I have used this. We haven't even met and had a motion to change any of those things. So I think for whatever reason, there has been at least it has not created any chaos among council. I'm not saying everybody always agreed with everything, but we have not had, chaos about trying to repeal and get the votes to repeal a proclamation. And I don't think going forward, there might be another year-long emergency in another 100 years, but I don't think we'll see one in our lifetimes. But I think these things are there for a reason, and I think, that they need to stand the test of time, and so I'll be voting against the amendment, but I will be voting for what passed at first reading. Are we ready to vote on the amendment? Anybody else want to speak? All right, so this is on the amendment to approve. A yes vote is to remove those items A, B, C, D, E, and F, and it would be effective on future proclamations. So we'll do this by roll call, if the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Rourke.
Yes.
Mr. O'Rourke votes yes. Mr. Rambo.
Yes.
Mr. Rambo votes yes. Mr. Santos.
Yes.
Mr. Santos votes yes. Ms. Whitley.
No.
Ms. Whitley votes no. Mr. Chapman.
No.
Mr. Chapman votes no. Ms. Corley.
Yes.
Ms. Corley votes yes. Ms. Hyatt.
No.
Ms. Hyatt votes no. Ms. Landing.
Yes.
Ms. Landing votes yes. Mayor Haney.
No.
Mayor Haney votes no.
So 5-4.
5-4.
All right, so the amendment passes. So now we have the amended ordinance, and we have a motion to approve, so we would be voting on the final ordinance. Is there any further discussion, ma'am?
Did you want a roll call on it?
Wait a second, do we have discussion?
Just add a clarification question. So the amendment we just made includes that it would not apply to the current proclamation,
Yes,
mass proclamation.
that was in the motion.
Yes, sir, I understand that to be the case for both amendments.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, both amendments. Okay, just wanted to make sure that was clear in my own head.
Okay, so on the floor is the motion to approve with the amendment of the 61 days automatic expiration. Is there any further discussion? I think we will do another roll call, please.
Mr. Rambo.
Yes.
Mr. Rambo votes yes. Mr. Santos.
Yes.
Mr. Santos votes yes. Ms. Whitley.
Yes.
Ms. Whitley votes yes. Mr. Chapman.
Yes.
Mr. Chapman votes yes. Ms. Corley.
Yes.
Ms. Corley votes yes. Ms. Hyatt.
Yes.
Ms. Hyatt votes yes. Ms. Landing.
Yes.
Ms. Landing votes yes. Mr. O'Rourke.
Yes.
Mr. O'Rourke votes yes. Mayor Haney.
Yes. All right, so it passes unanimously. All right,
Final reading, ordinance number 21015.
item number 3 is the moratorium on certain multifamily structures.
Move to approve.
We have
Second.
a motion to approve and a second. We are in discussion. Mr. Chapman, I think you have an amendment.
Yeah, I think there is a word omit on page 2 of 3. Does everyone have that on their information? That senior housing that includes restrictions on tenants or owners being 55 or older, so long as such multifamily structures and the project legally qualifies as a senior housing project under the Federal Fair Housing Act, and the project is designed to meet the needs of the seniors. And what I'm suggesting is an amendment, if I need to, and I'm looking at our council, because it exempts them from the moratorium, just like workforce housing or affordable housing and rebuilding of existing multifamily. And I think we got 13 units right now of assisted living or whatever you call it, 55 years or older. And I don't think they need an exemption. They're just like any other apartment or condominium. And so if I need to make an amendment, I'm gonna put it out there to amend the motion to omit item number 1, senior housing, from this moratorium.
Second.
All right. So the amendment is to not omit, is to not excuse senior housing from the moratorium.
Right.
Senior housing would be subject to the moratorium.
Correct. I'm just saying omit because
paragraph.
taking it
Got
out
it.
of what's,
Remove, okay.
what we've got,
All right,
or to remove it.
all right. We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Yes, ma'am.
So, I struggle with this one because I feel like our senior citizens, especially as they're looking to downsize and want to stay within the community, that a 55-plus community is something that is positive for the seniors in our community. So I'm struggling with this one a little bit.
Yes, sir. Ms. Santos?
I agree with my colleague. I'm kind of struggling with this one as well. Our seniors have it rough. A lot of them are retired, and it's, I think they should be included.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, if you guys drive down Faison Road lately, it is
Massive.
so aggressive, and kind of in your face. There's, how many units are there? Eric, it's intense.
Yes,
And have you guys been down Faison?
Hundreds.
You have to
Yes.
if you haven't.
Hundreds.
So I'm going to definitely support Mr. Chapman's amendment.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll
Ms.
save-
Landing and
I'll
then
s-
Ms. Santos. How
I'll
about that?
I'll save mine. I'm going to keep mine
Oh,
until
okay.
after
All
the
right, Ms.
amendment.
Santos.
I was just going to say, a lot of those, I think, they aren't senior housing. All of them are. A lot of them are apartments. I know people who live down around that area there.
Straight up retirement communities. There's 2 huge ones.
Okay. I would like to say something, Mayor, on that.
Hang on, are you finished?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yes, ma'am. You have.
Right, what Councilwoman Corley's referring to is when we first had the vote for the permit allocation, and even in the permit allocation, we exempted workforce housing and senior. And what's happened since then is that there's been a big move towards having a lot more senior housing. So right now we have, of course, we already had Merrill Gardens go in, which was quite a few units, but now Revel, which is a huge facility, is being built, which has memory care and a lot of cottages. I think with Merrill Gardens and that, it's several hundred. So I was told that from a data viewpoint, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, that we're just about saturated now on senior. I don't know if that's exactly correct. Can you tell us, Mr. DeMora?
I'm not familiar with the
You're
market.
not? I had heard that from several sources, but I don't have it as factually as I'd like to. But we do have a lot of senior housing now that we did not have a couple years ago when we started this.
Correct.
All right, any other comments?
I'll just
ma'am.
say, another thing that came up in committee is that the density is unlimited.
Yes.
And so that's been a problem, I think, and people have taken advantage of the fact that we have excluded it from the moratorium, and I think we have enough at this time.
Yes, sir, Mr. Rambo.
I was going to say, in the development industry, this is a big trend to build these, because they get around a lot of these town ordinances and things that are in place to prevent so much overdevelopment. I'm not just here, I'm talking about regionally. And they're very lucrative, and essentially they're apartments, but they just are age restricted to 55 years or older. It's not like what we would think of as like a retirement community where it's like an assisted living type. I mean, these are straight up apartments. They're just disguised in a way to where they get around all of our ordinances, and they're still charging a ridiculous amount to live in these places. And so I don't think they're beneficial for the community.
All right.
That makes sense.
So we have a motion to amend the ordinance to remove the exemption for senior housing. We prepared to vote? All right, I think we can try a voice vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes unanimously. So that brings us to final passage of the ordinance itself. We already have a motion and a second. Yes, ma'am.
So, Mayor, I would like to just read a quick statement because I was the only one that voted against it last time, but I am planning to change my vote, and some of you might have seen that in David Slade's article. But I'd like to give you a quick thing why. When the multifamily housing moratorium renewal was proposed at the last meeting for a first reading, I asked where the data was justifying such a decision. A moratorium is the strictest possible step to take in limiting development, and as an advocate of the free market to help determine best outcomes, I believed we needed strong data to warrant such a strong move. Also, we have a housing permit allocation that is in effect for several more years and severely limits multifamily housing. So what we would have with the moratorium is a belt and suspenders approach, and that is why I voted against it at the first reading. But since then, I've done my own research on the data that was missing. The ratio of multifamily, especially apartments, to single family is right in the normal average range for a community of our size. It's about 27%. As we all know, apartment rents are very high in Mount Pleasant, which partly explains why so many workers have to commute from other places. And the free market solution of continuing to build more apartments until we reach saturation so that prices beginning to come down will not work here because Mount Pleasant is running out of locations much quicker than demand. And also because this is contrary to the will of our community, who have seen substantial apartment complex building over the past several years. I know we all feel that way about places when you drive through like Midtown and so forth. Not to pick on them, but it is a lot of apartment buildings. As the Economic Development Chair, I've advocated strongly for private developers to create competitively priced workforce housing so that taxpayers do not have to pay for this and workers can live close to their jobs. We now have several different developers either building or proposing to do just that, and there needs to be space available for these projects. And since workforce housing is an exception within the written moratorium, and I recognize we really need this here in Mount Pleasant, I'm planning to vote for the moratorium at the second reading this week because we cannot see all of the remaining land available end up being used for high-priced multifamily and completely preclude the possibility of multifamily that our teachers, nurses, police, firefighters, med techs, and others can afford.
Any other comments? All right, the motion is to approve. We have amended it, so all in favor?
Mr. Mayor, would you just for the record, since we've had so much discussion, we're approving, we're exempting workforce housing and affordable housing only.
Those remain, that has not changed from the original moratorium, right? That was not, but the only amendment was to remove the exemption for senior.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yeah.
Had a lot of talk going on.
Everybody clear on that? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously.
Final reading, ordinance number 21016.
All right, that concludes B, old business. C is executive session. Is there a motion to go into executive session for
So moved.
personnel issues to discuss personnel matters? Let me say before we vote that we would be going into executive session to discuss personnel matters, and we may take action on any item, including any subsection of any section listed on an executive session agenda or discussed in an executive session during a properly noticed meeting. All in favor of the motion to go into executive session for personnel matters, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in executive
Who was the
session.
second on that? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure.
Pick one.
Sure. I'm the one who made the initial motion.
Oh, then I was the second, because I also made the motion.
Right.
Yeah, I was the second.
Okay. All right, so we're going into the courtroom.
Yes,
Courtroom that way or?
We got, we're missing 2 people. All right, we have reconvened from executive session. No votes were cast. No action was taken. There being no motions to come out of discussions in executive session, item number 11 is to adjourn unless someone objects. Hang on a second.
Mayor, just
The attorney objects, yes, sir.
Just to put on the record, council old business B1, which was the budget amendment. The intent was there to be an amendment to include a crew, and we just wanted to clarify for the minutes that there was an amendment for that purpose, and that's all we need.
Okay, that's on the record. Thank you very much. We stand adjourned.